I want to talk to you about 3 specific topics not related to the pandemic, specifically about disasters and disaster loans. I'm Trevor, and with my partner Linda Ray, we have been helping small businesses since the early days of the pandemic with the U.S. Small Business Administration's Disaster Loan Program. Specifically during the pandemic, we assisted businesses with the COVID pandemic disaster loans. First, I'd like to talk about the different disasters recently eligible for Small Business Administration disaster loans. They're happening with more frequency, and if you're going to argue with us about that and about climate change, please don't bother, because if you do, we're going to delete you and we're going to block you from our channel. We already know what has happened these last 2 weeks in Los Angeles and the devastation that is still ongoing, the danger from wildfires because of the Santa Ana winds, Hurricane Helene, Milton, and the tremendous, terrible damage and destruction caused by those storms in the southern states, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Florida. From recent videos I've watched, we see that so sad that they're still finding bodies and they're still searching for people who were washed away in the devastation. There are other natural disasters occurring all around the country. Anything from a drought to a couple of years ago it was those ice storms in Texas that brought down electrical power lines and knocked out the electrical grid. Last year it was in Upper Michigan where the tourism trade was impacted by weather that caused fewer people to visit that area. That area qualified for disaster loans. Natural disasters are happening. Please don't pretend that they're not. And please don't pretend that climate change is not real. It is. In 1953, the Congress of the United States created the United States Small Business Administration. Specifically in the legislation, and I've read the legislation all the way back in the summer of 2020 after we assisted our first 40 clients to get approved for the COVID loans. And the Congress passed this legislation specifically to create the SBA for the purposes of providing working capital not to all small businesses, but to a specific group of small business owners or creators. They didn't call them entrepreneurs in the 1950s. Women, Native Americans, Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, and veterans. These groups were identified by the Congress of the United States as specifically in need of extra assistance because of the difficulty that these groups have or had and still have in obtaining, quote, working capital to either start or maintain or grow a business. And thus was created the U.S. Small Business Administration, which we call the SBA. As an additional component of that legislation, and I would invite you to go to the congressional record, find the legislation, it's not difficult to find, and read it for yourself. The Congress also enhanced that legislation by creating an aspect of the Small Business Administration's responsibilities as a federal agency to provide low-cost loans in response to natural disasters. 1953, the Congress at that time got things done, and they were very thoughtful of the future and of their present moment, recognizing the underserved communities who had difficulty accessing working capital, and recognizing that when a disaster hits an area, whether it's a tornado, hurricane, a wildfire, drought, ice storm, training thunderstorms, flooding, the devastation that that can cause on a community and on the American economy needs special care from the federal government. Many years later, when the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, was created, the conversation then arose about lending to homeowners, to renters, and to small businesses for physical damage that those constituents, those taxpayers experienced as a result of the disaster, and for the small businesses, injury to their ability to operate and earn revenue. And thus that was creating the economic injury component of the disaster loan program. So the disaster loan program has 2 components: physical damage, where a renter, a homeowner, a small business can get money from the Small Business Administration to repair damage. And in fact, there is a component where actually, depending on the type of disaster, you can request additional monies to build in what are called mitigation features on your physical property so that it will either prevent the this kind of damage should a disaster like this, should a storm or wildfire or tornado like this happen again, or at least to minimize that damage. So that mitigation feature is available. And that's the physical damage. But the economic injury component is available even if a small business did not experience physical damage. If you've watched our other videos, you will know that I often talk about Main Street and the dry cleaners. I don't know why I selected a dry cleaners. Maybe because when I was a mortgage banker and I wore suits and ties every day, I got my shirts dry cleaned. Now I wash them and iron them myself. But imagine a dry cleaners on Main Street in a town, and that town has experienced some kind of natural disaster. The dry cleaning store has not, thankfully, experienced any physical damage. But due to the nature of the disaster in the area, customers cannot get to the store or can only do so on much reduced numbers. And so as a result of the disaster, that dry cleaning store experiences a loss of revenue. And so that business would qualify for the economic injury disaster loan. So those are your components: renters, homeowners, small businesses, and the two types of loans that are available. All of these loans are available at very low cost, specifically to make the repayment of these loans affordable. And these loans are designed, in most often cases, to make up for the shortfall in insurance payouts when these homeowners or renters or businesses have insurance. And if the insurance doesn't cover, the payout doesn't cover the full repair for the damage or mitigation costs or loss of revenue. That's the purpose of the loan. So when FEMA was formed, the conversation arose in the Congress about giving FEMA the administrative aspect of the lending on these natural disaster loans, since the FEMA was designed specifically to address helping Americans in disaster areas in times of disaster. But it very quickly became apparent that because the United States Small Business Administration already had a lending infrastructure in place, in other words, they had written guidelines on how to approve loans, they had staff trained in how to process and approve loans, and the legal teams to process the closing, the legal documents for obtaining the loans, it was decided that FEMA would be the primary point on the ground for a disaster area. But beyond what FEMA could assist a homeowner, a renter, or a business, the Small Business Administration would step in and manage the lending aspect. So I hope that's clear to all of you in terms of disasters are real, climate change is real, these disasters are happening. If you are fortunate and they have not happened to you, count your blessings. We hear the stories coming out of North Carolina, Tennessee, and other areas where people thought they were in areas that would never be impacted by a hurricane, and yet they were, very sadly. And I mentioned you in our audience. There are over 10,000 of you who are subscribers. And if you've stayed with me this far in the video, I truly appreciate that you have done that. I know this topic is not the same as that awesome video I recently watched about how to make beef bourguignon. I like to cook, and boy, that was a great video. But we know how mundane and boring this topic can be. We truly appreciate you. Linda Ray and I really value your support. And if you are not subscribed, you should know that more than 70% of the folks who watch our videos are not subscribed. So if you wouldn't mind taking a moment right now to subscribe to our channel, to hit the bell for notifications so that you get notifications when we upload new videos, which are not very many and not very often, but we like to think they are important enough that you'll want to know about them or to share them. And also hit the like button. The reason I'm asking you this is not because we make a lot of money. We don't. This YouTube channel is what they call monetized. You see advertising here on our channel, and it means that YouTube pays us a very minimal amount. It's a couple of $100 every 3 months. It's not paying our bills. I think there may be a misconception out there in the world that everybody on YouTube is making millions of dollars and driving Lamborghinis. We drive a Mazda. We love our Mazda, by the way. We have made our money in our consulting practice by assisting small business owners with the COVID program, and then subsequently with other aspects of that program and the disaster loan program. But we have recently closed our consulting practice, and now our focus is on selling guidebooks that assist small businesses in a multitude of different ways, including how to be successful with the Small Business Administration for disaster loans. I want to be clear, I'm not here to sell you any of our guidebooks today. I'm not here to sell you you any of our services or products. I'm here because Linda Ray and I, in the early days of the pandemic, and when I say early days, I mean literally day 2 of the pandemic here in Connecticut, March 18th, 2020, we had a conversation right here in my office where we had just the day before, March 17th, 2020, we had seen our small, hard-earned commercial brokerage practice evaporate before our eyes because we were in business at that point just a little over a year, and we'd built a small book of business of loans that we were processing with lenders to help small businesses here in Connecticut, one in San Diego, California, and the banks on March 17th said the vault is closed. And here in Connecticut, in the tri-state area, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, the governors had agreed that basically pandemic lockdowns started on March 17th, 2020. So on March 18th, day 2 of the pandemic, we had a conversation because I was a mortgage banker for 30 years. And I was there to watch that nightmare of the subprime garbage and the criminal, fraudulent garbage of those loans rise up while I was originating FHA, Federal Housing Administration, and Veterans Administration government loans. And I watched people around me like drinking the Kool-Aid about these subprime loans, both my colleagues as loan officers and banks I worked for and consumers, the general public. It was crazy days. And then I was there when it melted down. I was there in the dark days after the crash. And I saw all the way through that, especially with the growth of social media and with blogging and online chat forums, I saw the criminals, the unethical lowlifes crawled out from under their rocks and took advantage of people with misinformation or inaccurate information. And on March 18th, I said to Linda, I don't know what's going to happen with this thing. I said, but the best thing that we can do based on my experience in the mortgage business is to go out there and give people accurate information, because there are going to be so many people, nasty, unethical, criminal people looking to take advantage of people's desperation and confusion. And that's what we set out to do. And during the pandemic, yes, we assisted 500 clients who hired us to obtain $70 million of COVID loans right here in this room, first on my laptop and then on that computer over there on my desk. And we did free phone calls. We offered 15-minute free consultations where I gave people on the phone, and often much longer than 15 minutes, by the way, because we believe in helping people. Linda Ray and I believe in charity. And I'm going to come back to the charity in a moment, but I'm kind of leading up to that. Free phone calls where they got to pick the brains of an expert, a veteran of 30 years as a loan officer, familiar with government lending programs, and I'd already been successful with the first 40 clients that hired us in the early days of the pandemic. Between March and June of 2020, we had 40 clients submitted and approved for EIDL loans, and for many of those clients who couldn't get PPP loans, Paycheck Protection Program loans, for whatever reason, I found banks on my own, and we did this as a courtesy. We did not charge our clients additional fees for the PPP loans because I read the regulations, and that was a criminal activity. You were not permitted to charge a fee. And so we gave that service away for free to our clients who had hired us for the COVID Economic Injury Disaster Loans, the EIDLs. We did the free phone calls. We did free YouTube videos. Everything as mundane as how to fill out a specific form for the IRS or for the Small Business Administration, how to speak to an SBA agent on the phone. And we did updates on things that we were seeing in the program as it progressed from 2020 to the end of the program in May of 2022 and beyond. Even after it closed, we continued to do update videos. We continue to do them today. So we've given away a lot for free. And that's where I want to speak to you about charity. One quick final note before I do. Linda's background is in insurance. 30 years in the insurance industry as an underwriter, as an insurance broker, and as the owner of an insurance agency. My career, I started out in my 20s in customer service. I was a kid with long hair, getting $4.75 an hour, and I got promoted to manager and then district manager and then regional manager in customer service because I knew how to take care of people and I knew how to train people to take care of people. And then I started my career in the mortgage business where for 30 years, my motto in the New York area was, at the end of my career, my motto was $15,000 in a dream and I'll put you in a house. I believed in the American dream, and I believed that the Federal Housing Administration program was, and still is, an amazing program to assist Americans to become homeowners. And I've read thousands of credit reports. I've spoken to thousands of people, read thousands of tax returns, both during my mortgage career and then in the 5 years that we've been working with the COVID program. So we have a level of expertise that we know from feedback from you folks in our audience, people who contact us by email, people who call us and ask for help. We know that the type of expertise we provide here on our YouTube channel is not available elsewhere. I also know this because I watch the other YouTube videos, and some of them are very good, but they're in a different place in terms of the information that they're going to give to you. If you don't already know us, take a moment, look at our videos, look at the comments, look at our Google reviews for Aurora Consulting in New Milford, Connecticut. There's a lot of Aurora Consultings in the United States, apparently. So if you Google Aurora Consulting, New Milford, Connecticut, you'll find us. You'll find our Google reviews, which we have just shy of 300 reviews. And you can see the level of gratitude from folks who, like you, may not have known us at first, but as we assisted them and they became aware of the level of our expertise and our care for getting it right and our care for you understanding the information in a form that's easy to understand and easy to digest for people who more often than not are not dealing with finance on a day-to-day basis and sometimes maybe have never had to deal with finance, lending and so forth for their small business. And we understand that, and that's why we have created this expertise, but also why we present it in the way that we do. Okay, I want to speak about charity, and I see all of the posts coming out of North Carolina and the other states in the southern area where they were impacted by Helene and Milton. I see the posts from people in California asking for help, fundraisers, GoFundMe, and we applaud anything that is of a charitable nature that assists people in their most desperate times of need. That having been said, I want to share with you the type of charity that Linda Ray and I want to offer to you here on YouTube. As it stands right now, we have created a new playlist of our previously released videos, but we have culled those videos down and organized them in a way that is going to assist people in disaster areas on applying for the Small Business Administration Disaster Loan Program to maximize their chances of success. We cannot guarantee that our assistance is going to get you an approval because there are so many variables and the bureaucracy on its own can be very challenging to deal with. That's where the videos come in, to help you prepare for applying for these loans and help you manage the process and the communications and the paperwork and all of that you will find in our curated playlist, which you will find linked in the description below. We would encourage you, if you're in one of those disaster areas, to visit our newly updated playlist. We will attempt to update some new videos in the coming weeks, but I think the playlist we've curated for you is going to be very substantial in assisting you to be successful with the program. Here's where we're asking our 10,000 subscribers, or you folks who are visiting as a casual subscriber, and again, as I said earlier, if you've stayed with us this far, wow, thank you. It means a lot that you have hung in there for this old dude yakety-yakking about disaster loans and disaster areas. Thank you. Truly appreciate you for that. Please do consider subscribing to the channel, like the video, and hit the notifications, because when you do that, it tells YouTube that our video has value, and it helps YouTube to share our video out there to more people. But sharing is where we want you in our audience to go with this video in particular. Would you please take a moment to make your charitable contribution to folks in these disaster areas by sharing this video right now to your friends, your family, your business colleagues, your vendors, your customers. If you're in a business networking group, share it with those folks. If you are in, let's say you're in New Hampshire, but you know people in Los Angeles or North Carolina or Florida or Texas, please share our videos. Grab the link, send an email to someone you know and say, hey, you might find this information useful as you navigate the disaster loan process with the FEMA and the SBA. It will probably take you less than 3 minutes. I'm asking you from the bottom of my heart to please take this moment and engage your sense of charity for folks who need this kind of information. We make almost nothing from our YouTube channel here. We're not asking you to share this video so that we become rich. We're not even going to make a living from it. We're asking you to share the video as a charitable concept to help folks in these disaster areas who are faced with utter devastation and loss and who may need access to this vital program, which as American taxpayers, they are entitled to apply for and to be approved for. And the SBA, I will tell you, makes it very difficult to get approved for these loans. Their track record for approving loans in the disaster loan program is abysmal. I found the GAO report a few years ago, and the percentage of approvals relative to the number of applications is terrible. Having processed thousands of transactions with the SBA since the early days of the pandemic, and as recently as 2 days ago, when I was on the phone with one of our clients in California who was declined not for one, but for 2 different disaster loans. And the reasons were unknown because the SBA did not tell him. I had to put on my Sherlock Holmes hat and be a detective to figure out what I thought were the reasons why he was declined, which I think, when we've never been able to verify this, that it came down to something as simple as he had changed his address. And 2 days ago, we were on the phone with an SBA loan specialist who was offering him an abysmal amount of money. His business lost over $670,000 of revenue due to one disaster in the San Diego area of California. The SBA was offering him $13,900 because of his tax returns. As I said earlier, I've read thousands of tax returns. There are deductions on tax returns that are what we call paper. They're not real money. Depreciation, interest, one-time expenses, things like these can be added back. We could not get through to this SBA representative. She escalated it to her team leader, so we'll see what happens. But that's what I mean. The average person, whether they're a renter or a homeowner or a small business owner in the disaster area, does not have access to that experience. Thankfully, because you only want to go through one of these terrible disasters once, and you don't even want to do that. That's why this channel exists, to assist folks with our free videos, with detailed instructions, with detailed background, and yes, my storytelling about situations that are designed to assist you and people applying for the loan program to be more successful. So please, click that little charity button in your head. Subscribe to our channel if you're not already subscribed, because that tells Google, tells YouTube our video has value, and that will help expand the video to a larger audience. Like the video if you don't want to subscribe. If you've subscribed, like it also. Do both. As one final note, I would like to survey you folks watching our video and ask you if you would like us to do a live question and answer session here on this channel to answer questions for folks in disaster areas who have either applied and they're either having difficulty with the SBA, or they just have basic questions about documents they need to submit or forms they need to fill out, or people who have not applied yet. If you believe that we should do a live question and answer, please take a minute right now and comment. Yes, please do a live Q&A. And depending upon the responses that we get, we will determine if it is viable for us to do a live stream question and answer session to assist folks in disaster areas to be more successful with the U.S. Small Business Administration's Disaster Loan Program. And again, on behalf of Linda Ray, I'm Trevor, and I want to thank you for watching this video. I want to thank you for taking a moment and extending some charity to folks who need our help, and sharing this video and subscribing and liking the video so that YouTube will share the video.